ignorance, to show us the path of knowledge, to give illumination, to get immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Sri Ramakrishna would go into samadhi state many times each day and night. It was very natural to him. Even if it just hears one syllable of the divine name, immediately his mind would jump to the highest state of bliss. His mind was so tuned to the divine, many times it was rather very difficult for him to come down to the phenomenal world. Many times he would spend in ecstasy. He had wonderful visions and experiences. So when he came down from that superconscious state, he would teach pearls of wisdom which were so effective, which were so direct. They would inspire the devotees. They would feel so much charmed to hear every word coming out of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna said, once a person gets that experience of samadhi, that is going beyond the realm of mind, then he will no more be charmed by any worldly things. That is the indication of an enlightened soul. He is no more deluded by the world. The secret is revealed. He is in direct communion with the divine power. He becomes absorbed in the consciousness of God. And he always experiences inexpressible joy. Limitless joy. So, once a person gets that joy, one cannot find words to express the joy of samadhi. That is why Swami Vivekananda used to tell Sri Ramakrishna he would be willing to be always in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because he knew what Nirvikalpa Samadhi meant. It is a state of bliss. There is no more botheration there of any kind. So as I said earlier, the mind of such a person has become superfine. It has been refined thoroughly. then it loses all attachment to worldly things once for all. There is no more attachment in such a person. He is not attached to anything. One may have spiritual concentration and meditation, but the important point we should note, as Sri Ramakrishna said, is that one should never forget to love God. To love God is the core of religion. It's the core of religious practices. What's the use of life if one doesn't love God? Sri Ramakrishna, he was always concerned about the youngsters like Narendra and Rakhal. He was very anxious to know about them. Whenever they would come, he would be in ecstatic joy. And people were wonderstruck. How is it? If a person has experienced samadhi, he has no more attachment on anything, then how is it Sri Ramakrishna is attached to these youngsters? A question may be asked. In fact, this question was put by Hazra, who was a Vedantin in his own way. The reason has been given by Sri Ramakrishna himself. Why he is after these youngsters? Why? Because the mind, once it is well established in that high superconscious state, it has to be occupied in some way in the phenomenal world. When the mind descends to the level of the world from that high superconscious samadhi state, otherwise how can he help the people? In the case of ordinary people, the mind doesn't come back. So once the river, a particular river, merges in the ocean, there is no more coming back. It is finished. It has become part and parcel of the ocean. It is just like that. A spiritual aspirant, when he reaches that highest state of samadhi, he becomes one with God. He experiences he is God himself. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. It is no more a theory. He is actually that. So, something is necessary to keep the mind in the phenomenal level. So Sri Ramakrishna was always seeking the company of the devotees endowed with sattva. Because God manifests himself more clearly in those devotees who are sattvic, in those who are no more interested in the glamour of lust and money. That attraction is dead, no more. mind is no more going in that direction. It is free from that. That is why all the Mahatmas clearly state that it is very important to keep the mind at the sattvic level, which is rather very difficult when we are busy in the world carrying on various responsibilities. So this is the first point which Sri Ramakrishna has said, why he is attached to these youngsters. He is immediately attracted towards the people who are pure-hearted, whoever it is. His heart would reach them, and he was ready to help them in any manner. And he did help them. He guided them. He trained them. He gave them illumination, gave everything what is needed. And then, after training them fully well, he gave the whole band of his disciples for the welfare of the humanity. The greatest contribution of Sri Ramakrishna is the gift of his wonderful disciples to the world, who have no caste prejudices, who have no prejudices of any kind, whose minds are pure, simple, highly sattvic. That is the greatest contribution which Sri Ramakrishna has given us. The second point which I have taken up for explanation is that regarding the riches, what's the observation of Sri Ramakrishna? How did he look upon them? The riches are very important as far as we are concerned. But Sri Ramakrishna's view is different. People love their own riches. It's obvious, everybody knows it. And so they think God loves them too. Can one ever bring God under control through wealth, through offering money? I offer you $500,000. You give me your realization. Is it possible? Once Shambhu Malik, a devotee, he requested Sri Ramakrishna to bless him that he may die leaving his riches at the lotus feet of God. Sri Ramakrishna replied, well, these are riches only to you. What riches can you offer to God? To him, these are mere dust and straw. Nothing more than that. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example how once a thief stole the jewels of Lord Vishnu in Dakshineshwar temple, there's the Radhakanta temple. Mathur Babu, who was looking after the temple, everything, he became very upset when he came to know that all the jewelry has been stolen. He became so restless and angry. With whom? With God. So he is addressing to God, what is shame? What is shame on you? You couldn't prevent the thief taking away all the ornaments from your body. You kept quiet. You couldn't act upon. So he is expressing this way loudly. Sri Ramakrishna heard it. And Sri Ramakrishna immediately retorted and told him, what are you talking about? It is not shame on God, it is shame on you. These jewels are just lumps of clay to God. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is his consort. Do you mean to say that God should be alert because a thief has taken away your few riches? Don't say such things. So then Sri Ramakrishna makes a remark. It's very important for us, the spiritual aspirants, to know these things. God cannot be tempted by money. He can be reached only through love. Only through love, through bhakti, through prem, God can be obtained. Not by offering huge sums of money. What God wants from his devotees is love, devotion, feeling, discrimination, and renunciation. God looks into these things. If we have these features in us, God himself will run to us. Because God wants people of such caliber. There is a wonderful episode in Mahabharata, probably you're all aware of it. You know, before the Mahabharata war broke out between Kauravas and Pandavas, Lord Krishna tried to prevent such a catastrophe. He knew the war would take place. He knew who will be killed. He knew the future events. The Lord of the universe, he knows past, present, future. But still he is acting upon, in the human level. Lord Krishna himself tells, otherwise people will not understand. Oh, Krishna kept quiet, he could have done. Why did he not try peace mission, etc. People unnecessarily talk about. So in order to pacify them, in order to follow the human traditions, let us put that way, Lord Krishna, even though he knew the end result, he came. He came for trying peace mission. He came to Hastinapur. In fact, Draupadi and Bhima, they were all very concerned, and they didn't want any peace to be done with Kauravas. They were after war. We must punish these most wicked people on the earth. Even Draupadi was telling Krishna, But Krishna assured Draupadi, don't worry, nobody can prevent war. But I'm trying. Don't worry about that. So in a way, Krishna assured Draupadi. In another way, he is trying for peace mission. But he is trying sincerely. You must know that. So he has come to talk to these people about preventing the war. Dhritarashtra, the king, he came to know about Sri Krishna's visit. So he made elaborate arrangements to receive Krishna. And he called Vidura and he told him, well, I want to give Krishna many precious gems and costly gifts. I want to give him a chariot and horses and 1,000 other things. He deserves all this and much more too. The idea of my giving all these things to Krishna is that I want to please him. You must underline this statement. Dhritarashtra wants to please Krishna by offering gifts. That is the usual way how the worldly people do. If you want to develop a friendship, you take him to a restaurant, give him a nice meal, give him a drink, he will be with you always. At least for the time being. He will be your best friend. He will act upon whatever you want. Tongue is so powerful. Tongue. So he thought Krishna could be taken to his side by these methods. But Vidura, a great devotee, he knew Dhritarashtra's heart, how crooked his heart was, how his heart was after Duryodhana, though he knew that Duryodhana was the personification of wickedness, still he is not preventing him doing mischief. So Vidura is telling to the king, well, you are trying to offer gifts to Krishna. You can't conceal anything from me. You are thinking of methods by which you can bribe Krishna. How is it you have become suddenly so very generous? You are prepared to give so much to Krishna, who is to talk to you about the Pandavas, but you have not the heart to part with even 5 villages as far as the Pandavas are concerned. Just 5 villages. Now you are suddenly coming up with this gesture. You cannot win Krishna over to your side so easily as all that. You think you can buy that great Krishna by your cheap wealth. For you the wealth may be very prominent, very important. Please do not insult Sri Krishna. I can tell you, nothing, no amount of coaxing or pleading can please Sri Krishna. So he expressed his opinion about the plan of Dhritarashtra. Well, Sri Krishna came. First he came to the palace of Dhritarashtra and he talked with him. Then, I'm not going to the details. It's a very interesting episode. Then he goes to the palace of Duryodhana to talk to him, to inform that he has come. And Duryodhana was seated on his throne. Shakuni, Dushasana and Karna, his counselors, they were all sitting by his side. When Krishna entered the palace, the Shakuni, Dushasana and Karna, they all stood up to receive him, to greet him. But Duryodhana was so full of vanity, pride, he did not get up from the seat to welcome Sri Krishna. He was so egoistic, and he wanted to show his power to Krishna that way. He wanted to assert himself that he was the ruler of the whole kingdom. Nobody else could occupy his place. Then Duryodhana is telling Sri Krishna, Krishna, we have made elaborate arrangements for your stay and for your pleasant amusements. Everything is done. Not only that, we have prepared excellent dishes for you. But I understand you refuse all this hospitality and just you are thinking to go to Vidura's home. How is it? By this act of yours, I am feeling very much hurt. Duryodhana is telling Krishna. It is wrong of you to have been indifferent to our hospitality. You know I am the king. I am responsible for your safety and all other factors. And moreover, there is no enmity between you and me. We are quite fond of you. So why should you refuse? Why do you want to go to that poor man's cottage? He's calling Vidura poor man. Lord Krishna smiled. Krishna is very famous for smiling. His smile is very attractive. And he said, Duryodhana, I am afraid I have to be frank with you. I am not interested in your grand feast. No, not at all. I do not relish food in the house of a person who is not righteous. You are unrighteous throughout your life. You are so brutal and torturous. You are tormenting the good people, full of jealousy and hatred. So do you expect me to take food in your home? No. You have been hating the Pandavas without any reason. He who is a slave to avarice and ill-treats the Pandavas is considered by me to be the lowliest of men. You hate them, So the food which you offer me is the food of an enemy. It is a poison. It must not be eaten. This is the opinion of Sri Krishna. And telling like this, Sri Krishna just got up and walked away. He came to the house of Vidura, who received him with great affection. He pleased Sri Krishna with his worship. He offered arghya and flowers at his lotus feet. He offered milk. He was so courteous, so full of love. God is pleased with him, not with the wealth of Duryodhana. The wealth of the worldly people is like that of the Duryodhana. How many people do earn money with proper means? Who is to judge? So Sri Krishna took his food there in the humble cottage of Vidura. And the Lord of the universe is taking rest in poor man's cottage. There is a Sanskrit verse. Vipado naiva vipadaha, sampado naiva sampadaha, vipad vismaranam Vishno, sampan narayana smritim. Excellent verse. The meaning is, misfortune is not the real misfortune. Fortune is not the real fortune. To forget God is verily misfortune. To remember God is verily fortune. So let us try to understand, build up our life, and cultivate love towards God. Then God is pleased. Then we receive God's grace. That God's grace purifies our heart, and it gives us the experience of bliss, samadhi. Then we are liberated forever. So, these are the points which I wanted to tell regarding my previous class. Page 323. Ramakrishna visited Keshav Chandra Sen, who had become a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. The whole life of Keshav Chandra Sen was turned into a life of spirituality under the loving guidance of Sri Ramakrishna. Keshav Chandra Sen was very eminent and very reputed person who was the founder of Brahma Samaj. Sri Ramakrishna used to call him and his followers as modern Brahmajnanis. Anyway, wherever there is skill, intelligence, glory, power, as Lord Krishna tells in the Vibhuti Yoga, it is the supreme power of God only that manifests that way So Sri Ramakrishna recognized some of these great people of the time. He himself would go to them, and by his utter simplicity and realization of the divine, those people would be completely fascinated by Sri Ramakrishna's wonderful power of teachings. He would correct them, little corrections here and there, so that their life becomes fulfilled. So, from this point of view, Sri Ramakrishna's advent is very unique. So, having come to this life, we need not have to worry about or feel miserable in any manner, because God has given us the opportunity through this human life. In fact, God, out of His infinite grace, He is giving us a golden opportunity so that we may pursue the spiritual path and arrive at the abode of supreme bliss. Well, the spiritual journey is long way off. Let us not be emotional or become restless, a sort of tension that we have not been able to go ahead in our path properly. We don't know whether we would be able to reach the goal or not. So the Mahatmas come, Sri Ramakrishna has come and giving the assurance that no effort is wasted. It has got immense value. Even if we have uttered the divine name once, it has got its value, it has got its effect on our personality. When Chandra Sen and Sri Ramakrishna were talking on spiritual matters, in a way Sri Ramakrishna was giving spiritual instructions to Chandra Sen so that his mind may rise above the body which was ailing. And Sri Ramakrishna makes a remark that this illness which Chandra Sen has got is because of the upsurge of the spiritual power. A tremendous transformation is taking place in the inner personality of Chandra Sen, an account of the grace of Sri Ramakrishna So that spiritual force is engulfing the whole system, and the body is not able to withhold that tremendous power rising in the inner personality of Keshu Chandra Sen. So, body is suffering. Then the mother comes there and she requests Sri Ramakrishna to bless Keshu Chandra Sen so that he may be free from illness. And Sri Ramakrishna answers that blessings are given only by the Supreme God Himself. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna Himself is that Supreme God, but he is referring to Divine Mother Kali, and he is advising them to pray to the Divine Mother, the bestower of all bliss. She will take away all your troubles. We may be in any trouble, but once we develop that prayerful attitude, once we learn how to pray, you are completely saved from all troubles. Sri Ramakrishna tells, every prayer is being heard by God, and His guarantee for that statement. So what he wants us to understand God's grace, we should cultivate love of God. We love the world, and so we are bound to be in some troubles. As long as we have a body, we must experience some kind of disease, sorrow, fear, pain, and all sorts of sufferings. Body is subject to all such things. If we are to get relief from all the troubles, we must hold on to God. Troubles in the physical level, troubles in the mental level. All these troubles can be overcome when we develop love of God. And whenever we utter the name of God, let us do it wholeheartedly and with all devotion. One thing we should learn, coming to this world, we will have to pass through the school of adversity. We learn much from our troubles. Sri Ramakrishna said, iron must be heated again and again and hammered 100 times before it becomes good steel. Then only it becomes fit to be made into a sharp sword and can be bent in any way we like. So, man must be heated several times in the furnace of tribulations and hammered with the persecutions of the world before he becomes pure and humble and fit to enter the province of God. Then only he is qualified to enter the presence of God. Then only he becomes qualified to experience the most wonderful bliss. So, Sri Ramakrishna is telling very clearly, if we are sensing any problem or trouble or difficulties or dangers, go to God and pray. Pray with all devotion. You will become all right. Second point which Sri Ramakrishna says, all depends on God's will. See, it's a very important and significant statement. That is why the holy people, those who have practiced yoga or those who have advanced in spiritual achievements, they become it goes on those lines. They can predict very clearly if they want to, really. That shows even the movement of the grass, the blade of grass, is by the will of God. So everything happens at His will. Many clever persons were born in this world. But what has been their end? Everything comes about and is destroyed at the supreme will of God. So He is creating this whole universe and all the beings in order to make them understand that they belong to Him. That is to say, the Divine Lord is making us His own. He is always in that process of getting us into Him. So, He will not allow even the slightest ego to remain within us. The sufferings and the difficulties we are undergoing are intended to make us realize that we have no independent will of our own. It's all given over to the Lord. Therefore, we should be contented with what He does and wherever He keeps us. That is the intelligent way of getting through in this life. Divine providence no doubt, has given the sense of free will and the principle of karma. If people don't feel that they have free will, they will not be able to do anything. So, God Himself has given that sense. It is left to a man to do as he wishes. If he chooses to do actions which bring him less happiness and more misery, he alone is responsible, not God. The mainspring of our personality is will. Will. Very important point we should underline. I am what I am because of my will. For realizing itself, the personality has needed of some dynamism, and so the will divides itself into two. One may ask, how can there be two free wills? In action there are two, but in essence it is one free will only. To give an example, every time we move, it's only one leg that takes the decision. We must have two alternatives to decide on one, even as we must have two legs to advance one forward while we rest on one. So, in essence, it's only one free will. The interaction or interpenetration or integration between the two free wills, which gives the dynamism of life, the grand variety of choice between two certitudes, becomes possible if only we have two free wills. We say, we have chosen such and such a thing or alternative. Both the things present before us and we choose. One will tells, go this way. Another will says, no, I shall go this way. In reality, we have chosen one of the free wills and not the object. When our being chooses to be creative, it divides itself into two, and this division is to serve its own purpose, to realize its own goal. The moment the desire for creation rises, there is duality. Creation and duality are not the real state of being, they are only its dynamism. Above creation is unity, God. The God above creation and manifestation. So, if we know the reality as such, then there should not be any problem or difficulty in going through the path, even though we might have to pass through many difficulties on the way. Total reliance on the divine, total surrender to the Supreme Divine, completely identifying ourselves with the Paramatman, with the divine form whom we are worshipping. We should be able to pass on in this spiritual journey. And in spite of the difficulties, we will be enjoying bliss, joy and happiness come to us. We will be able to face all the problems in the life. So Sri Ramakrishna is telling, under all circumstances, pray to God. Pray to God. He will bless. He will bestow His grace. He will remove all the difficulties in our life and grants peace and joy. So these are the 2 points which I thought must be explained, so I have done. Unless we walk through the spiritual path, how can we reach the goal? So, the spiritual ideas must be practiced in a definite way. That's the meaning of walking through spiritual path. That means we must doing practices willingly. We must not stop them for any reason. Coming to the chapel, participating in the prayers, attending the class, to hear the spiritual ideas, they all form discipline. Mind gives some reason to get away from the discipline. But we lose by that way. Particularly those who follow the spiritual instructions of Sri Ramakrishna should not stop doing spiritual sadhanas for any reason. We are here to contemplate on the instructions of Sri Ramakrishna. Every word he spoke has a great spiritual significance. So, it is very important to understand these teachings in a clear way. Sri Ramakrishna visited Keshachandra Sen. He had a long talk. After everything was over, Sri Ramakrishna was returning back to Dakshineshwar. When he was coming down from upstairs, he found the house was not properly lighted. Sri Ramakrishna makes a significant remark. He tells, the house must be well lighted. A house without light becomes stricken with poverty. This instruction, though it looks very simple from outside, it has got great significance from the spiritual point of view. Whatever Sri Ramakrishna has said has got immense spiritual value. Why are we not happy? Why are we suffering in this world? Why do we stumble in life again and again? Why are we facing so many problems? All these things come because of the darkness of ignorance. We are steeped in ignorance. Ignorance means darkness. Knowledge means light. Problem is compared to darkness. Remedy is compared to light. We must bring the light of knowledge to dispel the darkness of ignorance. So let us try to understand the instruction of Sri Ramakrishna in this light. Now, Sri Ramakrishna has said many times, again and again Swamiji tells, repeat divine name. Try to meditate on the divine form. Do it constantly, then awakening comes. That awakening is light. Spiritual disciplines are meant for lighting the lamp of knowledge. So it follows, we must set the mind on spiritual theme. We must set the mind, otherwise it won't sit there. It wants to run away. It wants to run away. It doesn't obey you at all. You have to follow the mind wherever it drags you, wherever it pulls you. So we must set the mind on spiritual ideas effectively by following discipline in life. When the mind gets absorbed we see a shining light. It is the mystic vision. When we get into this experience, we feel a kind of higher and nobler joy. The mind then is reluctant to give up this joy, and it moves onwards. The vision of light will be concentrated into the form of the chosen ideal, and that leads to supreme bliss. The more we try to enter within, reaching the inner and inmost recesses of our heart, the greater the light we will receive. The Divine Mother, the embodiment of light, is within every heart. She is within me, she is within you, she is everywhere, in everything. From the highest God in the heavens to the smallest insect on the earth. In the movable and the immovable, she is present everywhere. We must pray to her. We are under her realm. We are in this world means we are under her realm. That means we are in Maya. We are in her jurisdiction. So, that means Sri Ramakrishna is suggesting that in order to get mukti, in order to get liberation from suffering, we must worship Divine Mother. She holds the key in her hands. The realm of light will be opened unto us if she graciously unlocks the door. The spiritual prosperity will be there when the light is lighted. She manifests herself in a pure mind. The spiritual sadhanas, the disciplines, they're all meant to purify the mind. The light is within ourselves. We must dive deep within and we will discover the light. Ordinarily, the mind is active in the three lowest planes. We should understand this very carefully. All our minds. Generally speaking, they are very active in the three lowest planes. What are those three planes? One is Mooladhara Chakra. That is, it is located between the origin of the reproductory organ and the anus. It is concerned with the most basic instinct of all, self-preservation. It is concerned with our animal nature. It links us to nature and the soil. It is concerned with survival and the fact of being. It has the adrenals, the fight or flight glands associated with it. It also regulates the senses of taste and smell. Mooladhara is located at the base of the spinal column. Our mind is very much there. That is why we find the animal nature prominent in us. The second one is Swadhisthana Chakra. It is associated with the prostatic plexus, the lumbar region, the sex urge, the procreative drive. The pleasure principle residing in this chakra extends to pleasure generally. So this is the center for pleasurable addiction to food and drugs and material comfort. Mind sits there in this second chakra. One is Mooladhara and next is Swadhisthana. The third one is Manipura. It is concerned with ego, with one's opinion of oneself. It is concerned with willpower and ambition. In most people, these first three chakras, Mooladhara, Swadhisthana and Manipura, they function together. If one is strong, all three tend to be strong. If one is weak, all three tend to be weak. Energy, the power, moves freely between them, back and forth. Nature has supplied these as our basic equipment, and the forces associated with them are of this basic nature. The gland associated with Manipura is the pancreas. It also rules the solar plexus and the epigastric plexus. Manipura regulates digestion and physical well-being and gives physical strength. This Manipura center is located in the region of the navel. Now, these three centers are located. One is Mooladhara, the lowest centers I am referring to. The next one is Swadhisthana, the third one is Manipura. All these three chakras, these three centers are located below our waist. So mind is always sitting in these three centers, running back and forth. It is dissipating all its energy, all its activities are centered around these three centers. It doesn't know how to rise up. As long as the mind is just running back and forth these three centers, there is no way to escape from the world. There is no way to freedom. That means mind travels up and down amongst these centers only, namely food, sleep and sexual pleasure. That's all. These three: food, sleep and sexual pleasure. These are the main activities associated with these three centers. So you can imagine how the mind is completely drowned. Completely in this mess. It doesn't generally like to rise above these planes at all. If the mind is made to rise to the plane of the heart, then one gets the vision of light. That is why all the spiritual masters generally recommend to concentrate on the heart center. We have to stabilize it. Then you will be able to see the light. One sees light when the mind rises to the throat plane also. What is called Vishuddha Chakra. It is not any gross light, it is a light of knowledge. We must aspire for that knowledge. Then only we can have spiritual prosperity. Otherwise, we will be always in the poverty, poor condition. Anahata is the heart center. It is also associated with thymus gland and the cardiac plexus. When we ascend to this chakra, this center, we move into a more spiritual realm with corresponding emotions. The uppermost emotion here is that of love or compassion for all beings. If a man is tender and affectionate, we immediately say, oh, how fine his heart is. That's the beauty of that. The energy residing in the three lower chakras, which I mentioned earlier, can be sublimated in the fourth. That is, by bringing the mind and making sit at the heart center. To make it sit at the heart center is the spiritual discipline. The moment you are trying to make it sit, it runs away. It slips down. Goes to the bottom, Muladhara. Or it may run to Swadhisthana. Or it may want to enjoy some things, come to Manipur. Just you are able to hold on the mind in the heart center, immediately it slips down. So that means we require more rigorous discipline to keep the mind in proper position. When we are able to detach the mind from the material things, we will see the effulgent light of God. It is very sweet and soothing, representing joy and peace and enlightenment. Beyond this universe lies that ocean of divine light. Sri Ramakrishna had that vision when he wanted to know who this Vivekananda in his previous birth. He wanted to know about it because whenever Vivekananda came to him, he was so reacting. He wanted to just find out exactly who is this person. So he concentrated for a while because his mind was so pure. It rose to the highest level. It went beyond the universe. He, Swamiji himself, Sri Ramakrishna himself tells that. My mind soared high, went towards all the lokas, different planets. It transcended the planets. Then he perceived the divine light. Anyway, the story goes there afterwards. Now the point is, it is through the grace of the great spiritual masters that we find our way to that divine light. How to recognize that grace? When we get initiation from the Guru, when we are inspired to take up spiritual life, when we get interest in the spiritual sadhanas, they are all indications of the grace of the spiritual masters. They help us to rise from the lower planes to the higher plane. Thus we get the inspiration to cross these seas of the material world and move into the ocean of divine light. Sri Ramakrishna said, he is pointedly telling, meditate on this portrait of mine, referring to himself. Sri Ramakrishna is telling about. You will have so many visions of light. Sri Ramakrishna is telling how fortunate we are. We have got spiritual master right in front of us. Why should we feel that we are poor? So that's all about lighting the lamp. The house must be well lighted. Every house, every body is a house of God. It must be well lighted. Spiritual lamp must be lighted properly. Try to keep the mind on the heart center always. Be watchful so that it may not slip down to lower centers and indulge itself in unpleasant things. That's the first important point which Sri Ramakrishna has said. The second point he is telling is that do your duty to the world after knowing God. With one hand hold on to lotus feet of the Lord and with the other do your work. Doing the work is all right. It doesn't say stop the work. No. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell a parable about the maid servant in a rich man's house. She does all the job of the home as if the home belongs to her. She fondles the child, she brings up the man's children as if they were her own. But in her heart of hearts, she knows that none of these belong to her. In the same way, we have to live in this world and do our duties. But in our heart of hearts, we must realize that nothing belongs to us. Our only true abode is at the lotus feet of the Lord, and that is where we must go. In favorable or in adverse circumstances, we must feel that we have none but Him and that we are serving Him through the faithful discharge of our allotted duties. We are in this world, that means we are having some duties. Perfectly all right. But we must be aware of the truth. The Lord's name is the only truth, everything else is unreal. to have faith in Him, to be devoted to Him, to praise His glories. These are the duties in life. How many of us are considering these as duties? Our conception of duty is entirely different. We think what we do, whatever we do is duty. No. We must have clear conception about the value of duties. As you have worldly duties, you have spiritual duties also. If you don't recognize it, that means you are not ready to have the spiritual peace. No matter how busy you may be in carrying out your duties, you must practice regular japa and meditation. Regular, very important. You may attend to 100 duties or earn $1 million, but know in our heart of hearts that all these are impermanent and someday will have to be left behind. The one abiding reality is God. So Sri Ramakrishna is warning, doing the duties, remembering God has immense spiritual benefit. Without that, it is simply a waste and leads you to utter frustration. That's the truth which Sri Ramakrishna has pointed out to us. Let us try to dwell upon these two main ideas which I have spoken now, and move onwards in our spiritual path. Peace and bliss. We have been studying Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, chapter 15. If we have to walk smoothly in our life, we should have undoubtedly a philosophic attitude. Philosophy is very important. Without that, it is very difficult to bear the unpleasant things that occur during our lifetime. Everyone will have to pass through so many crises in their life. Many terrible situations. But then, if we have the philosophical approach, it makes matter very easy, and we learn through these situations rather than losing our heart. Sri Ramakrishna makes it very clear that very important factor we should remember, that things happen in the world without waiting for anybody. They do happen. Many things happen. If we observe the things, it is easy to understand. how things go on in spite of ourselves. So, this view makes us very clear that we should hold on to our ideal in life, which is very important. We must try to adjust everything. Then we will be able to recognize the glory of God more and more. Sri Ramakrishna said, God laughs on two occasions. One is when brothers divide the property, putting the line. This portion is mine, that portion is yours. I will break your neck if you cross over this. They do break necks. God loves. The whole creation belongs to me. These fellows are crying and fighting, quarreling. They can't take anything when they give up the body. When the death comes, everything they have to cast off. They can't take anything which they have cherished so long throughout their life, with so much of attachment and so much involvement, working day and night and possessing so many things, so valuable things. Everything will have to be left over. There was one of my relations in my Purvashram, a very great Sanskrit scholar. He loved Sanskrit books. He loved it. His whole room was full of books. And every day, of course, he would chant some of the texts of those books which he had kept in his room, and he has arranged them so neatly. We can see how much he loves them. And he would spend hours in his room. That room is the mandir for him. His mandir of knowledge. Saraswati mandir. He would love to be there. And he would shed tears of joy. I had seen that person. He was very close to us. And he would not part with them. He loved them so deeply. But then, as everybody had to go, he also got some disease and he had to leave the body. All the books which he so much loved them, his whole heart was in them. All those things he had to give up, are forced to give up.